I know it's already 1 week into 2024, but today we're going to be building my TBR list for this entire year. Hi everyone, I'm Ashna Balasubramaniam and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this channel, I make videos regarding books, I do a little bit of journaling, and I also do a few vlogs, but majorly it's bookish content. Okay, so as soon as I got into the first week of Jan, I started reading this book called The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma. I just finished this book yesterday and it was such an amazing read. I rated this a 5 stars. So I'll be giving you a detailed review on it in another video separately. But as of now, this is the only book I have finished for 2024. So with that, let's start off with the video. Let's start building my TBR. I have a lot of physical copies of books. I have about 49 copies of physical books that I'm yet to read. And then I don't remember how many digital copies, as in I have the Kindle version of those books in my iPad. So that is something that I'm yet to check. But let's together build my TBR for 2024. So since 2023, I started tracking my reading digitally, and whatever my TBR list is, like if I've lent books to anybody or if I've borrowed books from anybody, I usually put it and track everything digitally. I will take you through this process in a separate video, but I use Notion for that. And so today we're going to be looking at my TBR list. So as in when I come across an interesting book that I want to read, but I don't have the copy yet, or I have the copy with me but I haven't started reading it, I usually add it to my unread books here. My target for 2024 is that I want to read at least 50 books by the end of the year. So if it is more than that, great, but I don't want it to be less than that. There are many books that I want to read, and I know it is not possible to read everything in the world that I want to read, but of these I'm going to be picking 50, and even if it is not in the list, I may end up picking another book that is probably, if I find it interesting in a bookstore or in a book fair. So here we are, let's go to the first book. The first book is called Dracula by Bram Stoker. I have this book since last year, but I still haven't read it, so I intend to read this book soon. And then I have another book called The Cat Who Saved Books. So this is by Sosuke Natsukawa. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm not spelling it right. Okay, these names are very unfamiliar to me. So this book, I had actually put it in my Amazon cart because I found the description very interesting. So last year on my birthday, my cousin actually took the liberty of checking my Amazon account without my knowledge, and she ordered this book for me and gifted it on my birthday. And I think this is probably one of the best surprises I've ever received, because someone going out of their way to actually trying to find out what I liked and getting me exactly that, I think it's such a nice thing to do, right? So yeah, that is also on my TBR. And I also have Matthew Perry's book. I've always seen Matthew Perry as Chandler, right, in Friends. So according to me, he's that fun, jovial person who is, probably a little confused here and there, but he has everything sorted. That is how I want to always remember him. And even though when he was still living among us, I still didn't want to, get into that book because somehow, I was not really ready to face all the addiction battles that he went through and all of that. But I think I'm actually going to start reading it this year. And I'm also going to include a lot of memoirs for this particular year. So Friends, Lovers and The Big Terrible Thing is his memoir, and I would really love to read it this year. Other than that, I have never tried a Murakami's book, so I'm going to start with Norwegian Wood. I have a digital copy of this book, so I'm going to start with that. Not just that, this year I'm planning to do a lot of rereads as well. So there are a lot of books that I have read, in my childhood and early adulthood. But since I read it back then, I kind of don't remember a lot of, I remember the overall plot of it, but I don't remember the actual story. And it's been far too long since I read those. So I want to do a lot of rereads. So back then I'd read a lot of classics. I want to get back into reading classics again. It's been a while since I read any classic. So of course Dracula is already there in my list, but I also intend to read a couple of them. Treasure Island is not something I've read yet, so I intend to read Treasure Island by R.L. Stevenson. I had read Kidnapped by R.L. Stevenson very long back, and though I very vaguely remember the plot of the book, I kind of, I don't remember what exactly like goes on in the story because I read it very long back. I think it's probably 10 years since I read that book. 10 to 12 years since I read that book. So yeah, I want to reread that. And I remember when I read Kidnapped, I fell in love with this character called Alan Walker. And now that I think about it, I kind of don't even remember what are the reasons why actually I fell in love with that fictional character. So I want to rediscover these books, read them all over again, and so I'm going to also have some of these rereads in my list. And other than that, I also have this book called The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I got this book last year as a part of a book haul, and The Song of Achilles is a book that's been trending everywhere in Book Talk. I've heard that the book is really good, and I intend to read it this year. The reason I'm not giving you the synopsis of the books is because I am yet to read these books, and I think it would be better if once I read it, I'm able to give you a proper synopsis and a review of that book. Moreover, we have a really long list to cover, so I'm just going to be mentioning those. The next one is The Kite Runner. I'm yet to read The Kite Runner. I've read Thousand Splendid Suns, but then I'm yet to read The Kite Runner, and also the other book of by Khalid Hosseini. It's called And the Mountains Echoed. I'm just going to type it down as well. Before I forget. So yeah, that is another book that I want to read. I have a copy of it, but then again I'm yet to read it. And I'm also planning to include a lot of self-help books this year. So I started off the year with this self-help book, The Leader Who Had No Title. I really loved it, and I want to make a few positive changes in my life, and these books kind of keep me motivated to that. I know at the end of the day, discipline is what matters, but even to stay disciplined, I feel like sometimes we need a little motivation. So reading these actually motivate me a little. So I'm going to be including a lot of those as well. So I have another book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Tawwab. I read half the book a very long time ago. Not very long time ago, probably like 2 years back or a year back. I'm not able to recollect, but I intend to read that complete book now. So other than this, The Time Traveler's Wife is also there with me. I got it in a book haul last year. I'm yet to read that. And so though I may not be making review videos on certain books that I read, I am just adding it to my TBR here. So I like reading a lot of these finance related books and things like that. So I have Anil Lamba's Flirt with Stocks, like it's another book. So I had read his book, Eye on the Bottom Line, I guess. I'm not able to recollect, but one of those books I read, and I found that his way of narration is just so amazing, so clear, and so easy to understand. So I worked in an investment bank for 6 years before quitting, and these things really interest me. So though I may not be making reviews on these books, I'm actually going to include them in my TBR. In addition to that, I'd also like to learn a little bit about politics and all of that. So I'll be reading those books as well, but then I'm not going to be reviewing such books on the video. But yeah, those are things that I'm going to include in my TBR. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. The next one is Digital Fortress by Dan Brown. I got it in a book fair. It's still lying there in my room. I intend to read that. Okay, before all of that, let me show you some of these books that I intend to read for Jan. Okay, so this is something that I've already read, and I'd gone out with my friend last week, and she gifted me a copy of Atomic Habits. I know people are raving about Atomic Habits, and my friend especially loved this book, and I'm sure even I will like it. So she actually gifted me a copy of this book with a very cute note inside. Thank you. So this is a book that she has gifted, and I'm so happy to read this. So I already started a little bit of this book in the morning. So I'm trying to wake up a little early, and then I'm trying to journal a little bit. Like usually I don't really have like a specific time for journaling. As in when I get upset, I just journal. As in when I'm very happy, I tend to journal. And it's not like I journal every single day also. So I'm trying to make it a habit to actually brain dump every day in the morning and read a little bit of a self-help book. So I started with Atomic Habits in the morning. So when I started Atomic Habits, like the introduction to this book is an introduction into the author's life, okay? So the author talks about a challenge he particularly faced in his life that actually led him to develop Atomic Habits and write this book. So as soon as I read that, I know it's a self-help book, okay? It's not supposed to make us cry. But then as soon as I read that challenging part in his life, My eyes just welled up with tears, and before I even continued reading that, I just googled his picture, and I wanted to just make sure that he's fine. And luckily he was fine, and later in the book also he tells that he's fine. But that is how it started off. And even in this, the leader who had no title, like here and there I just became a little emotional because Robin Sharma actually writes it as a story. And I really loved the story, like the story form of the content. Like there is a lot of things to learn, and this book is a wealth of information, so I kind of cried a little bit here as well. So I don't know, probably I'm a little sentimental, but yeah, that is how I enjoy the books. I don't skip paragraphs, I don't skip any lines. So even if I read it slowly, I tend to read everything because I want to have the full experience of reading that book. Okay, anyway, before I stray off the topic, these are some of the books I got recently. So I went to Sapna Book House and I got this book, A Wish for Us. Okay, so I think there is another book written by her. It's called A Thousand Boy Kisses. It's right here in a small label. Yeah, A Thousand Boy Kisses. I intend to read that as well, though I don't have a physical copy of that book. So my cousin has a copy of A Thousand Boy Kisses. Okay, so we are going to exchange these books once we finish reading it, and then I'll probably be able to review that as well if I like that book. Okay, even if I don't like that book, I'll review it anyway. So I mainly bought this book for the cover. I know I'm very guilty of buying certain books for the cover. Usually I try to go with the content, but this cover was way too pretty to ignore. And even the plot seems good. Okay, so I'll tell you the plot and all of my review once I actually finish reading that book. And I'm sure you would have seen these 3 books everywhere on TikTok. I mean BookTok or BookTube. Of course, we don't have TikTok in India, right? So we would have seen it in almost every BookTube accounts or Bookstagram accounts. I don't know why I keep saying BookTok, but please ignore me, okay? So The Wicked King, The Cruel Prince, The Queen of Nothing. So this is a part of a series. I'm hoping to read this by Jan. If not, I'll probably push it to Feb or March. So this is another set of series that I intend to read. And if you'd seen my previous video, I was actually planning to read this book called One Day in December. And somehow Christmas came, I couldn't really make time to read it. I was still reading another book. The other book is called I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day by Millie Johnson. I really loved that book. So that book is another 5-star rated book. So you must check out that review and you should definitely read that book. So before the next December comes, I intend to read this in a month or two, one day in December. But like I said, I'm just going to use these as guidelines, okay? It's not going to be a hard and fast rule that this is definitely what I'm going to be reading. So anything that you do, right? Like whenever you come across an interesting book, you may want to pick it up immediately. And sometimes it also depends on your mood. Sometimes I feel like reading a thriller, sometimes I want to read a rom-com and things like that. So because it depends on my mood, I don't like to impose a rule on myself and read something that I'm, really not feeling up for. Okay, so I also want to read this book by Ali Hazelwood, the new book, Checkmate. I think that's the book, yeah, Checkmate. So this is a new book by Ali Hazelwood. I intend to read that. So I've read her book, The Love Hypothesis. I've read her book, Love on the Brain, and then Love Theoretically. And so the thing is with Ali Hazelwood, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with her. I really love the way she writes. She is very humorous and her reading is so engaging that I don't feel like putting down the book. Okay, that's because of the way she writes. She's very funny and it's just very nice. But then the problem with her books is that I feel that her plots are very predictable. So I went reading, I really like The Love Hypothesis, but as and when I started reading, I could very easily predict the plot. And even Love on the Brain was literally just very similar to The Love Hypothesis. I just felt like, she just modified a few names and just changed up a few things and then published a book again. That's what I felt about her. Nevertheless, I still like her, style of writing. So I'm going to continue reading her books, which I know is very strange, but yeah, that is the thing. And I also read her book Love Theoretically last year, but I just didn't like it. It was actually one of my worst books of 2023. But again, I read it because I like her style of writing, but Love Theoretically just had no plot to it and I didn't like it. I know there are a lot of people who liked that book, but personally, this is my opinion, I didn't like that book that much. So I just rated it a 3 stars because her writing style is engaging, but other than that, zero plot. I just didn't like it. Like, I expect some sort of a climax at least, even though it's a rom-com. Some twist needs to be there, but I don't know. I just couldn't find that in Love Theoretically. But I'm going to give it another try. I'm going to read Checkmate because I really like her style of writing, like I said. Yes, another book. So I've been seeing this book in Sapna Book House every time I go. It has a very pretty cover. I don't have a physical nor a digital copy of it. It's called Bellegarde, okay? I think it's some historical fiction, rom-com or something like that. I'm yet to read it. So that book has a very Cinderella, fairy tale-ish, Beauty and the Beast sort of a vibe to it. So that is why I want to read that book regardless of whether it is good or not. I'm going to spend my time reading that book. So that is another one on my TBR. I'm sure you've seen this A Coat of Thorns and Roses everywhere. So I intend to read that as well. And then there is Shatter Me series as well. I have put that in the list and I want to see if it's worth the hype for myself. So that is why that is also there in the list. There is another series in the list called the Lunar Chronicle series. And the Bloodline series is also a part of the list. And then I'm sure you've seen this book trending everywhere, right? Yellow Face by Rebecca Kwong. So I intend to read that along with her other book called Babel. And in addition to that, I also want to read The 100 Loves of Juliet. This is by Evelyn Sky. If any of you follow the Big Book box, you would have probably heard of this book called The Herb Witch's Apprentice. It came in one of their boxes. So as soon as I saw that book, I felt that it's very pretty. The cover was very beautiful and it was a special edition book. So that is why, because that cover is good, I want to read that book again. So usually I try not to go by these covers and all of that, but off late I don't know, I'm just obsessed with these book covers as well. So far we have A Wish for Us, and then we have Bellegarde, and we also have The Herb Witch's Apprentice. But anyway, in a list of so many books, I'm glad that I'm going for only 3 books just because the covers are pretty. So I'm just going to pat myself on the back even though I'm actually doing a bad thing. Okay, and in addition to that, I also want to read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. That's another series of 2 books. And if you have seen my other videos, you know that I really enjoyed reading the True Blood series last year. So maybe this year I'm going to reread the first 8 books of the True Blood series because I really love those. The Outcast Queen, that is Karna's wife. So after every 2-3 books, I want to read a Millie Johnson book because that's my comfort read. And I forgot to mention in the video that I've not read Harry Potter series till date. I don't know, somehow I just fought against it so hard, but finally I've been really wanting to read it now, and this is the year that I'm going to read the Harry Potter series for the first time. I'm also planning a lot of interesting stuff for this year, so please stick with me. And yes, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching. Stay happy, stay blessed, and stay kind. Bye.